Well, welcome, Susanna. I am excited to have you here. We're going to continue our conversation. We talked about the coward, and I was laughing because I said a warrior would never do what a coward does. And I would like you to talk about your thoughts or experience around the opposite of a peacemaker, perhaps, which is coward, and then the other part is the warrior, who wouldn't find themselves cowering.
No, their weakness would be completely different. The warrior's lesson is restraint. So it's very possible that the person that I interacted with when I was talking about the story of the road rage incident and the man who followed me to the grocery store parking lot, that it's possible he had something like a warrior archetype. So his response was to come out in all of this aggression with all of this intensity to put me in my place, to let me know what I had done was wrong. The shadow side of the warrior is the militant. So there's this desire to control and to require other people to follow orders, let's say, to get in line, to do what they're told, to follow what's expected of them. And it's possible that those two archetypes, which seem like that they're opposing, but they're really complementary, they get drawn to each other because the lesson for the one is the shadow for the other. So in my case, I needed to develop courage and have more assertiveness in how I handled that situation. And I attracted an aggressive, angry, pushy person to help me learn that lesson. And for me, I'd be interested to know what lesson the other individual took from our interaction. But certainly the opportunity was there for him to learn restraint and humility, which is the lesson for the warrior. So the warrior's temptation, let's say, is to use aggression and power and force to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. They often don't have control over their emotions, but they think that they do because they can be stoic and they can hold all of their emotions in until they get caught off guard, just like I got caught off guard. Then they can have this surge of anger, this surge of righteous indignation that comes out of nowhere, and then they behave in ways that shock them. Perhaps he was even as shocked as I was by his behavior. Maybe he considers himself to be a very nice person who would never behave that way. And out comes this raging, angry, seemingly violent person who's striding across the pavement toward me, possibly surprised the hell out of him.
Yeah, I think sometimes that is true overall. People, my experience of warriors, because I know a lot of them personally, are very kind.
Right.
And when they get upset, what they have said is, I don't know what took over me. I just went berserk.
Right. Just like me, I withdrew and became, quiet and kind of passive and begging for forgiveness. A whole side of me came out that I didn't existed, but there it was.
And what was his response to you when you were cowering and got out of the car and he was raging? What was his response? Did he just keep yelling until he was finished?
Yes, but there was disgust in his face.
That you had upset him, that you were the catalyst for his rage?
Possibly, or disgust that I was not meeting his warrior with bravery.
Okay, so it could be both of those, either one of them.
Yeah.
Because I've also experienced with warriors, because I'm not a warrior, with that archetype, I've also experienced disgust of the frustration that I wouldn't fight like they would fight. Who are you and why? What's wrong with you that you won't fight?
Right. So that was what my interpretation of his response was. because I saw contempt in his face. And
Well, that is what they share.
yeah. And when he gave up, he was like frustrated.
That you didn't fight back.
I'm assuming. And then stormed back to his car. You know, and I was just left in shock. But the thing that I recognize is that we were both in our shadow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we were offering each other an opportunity to recognize that shadow. Because I came out as a character onto the drama of life that I did not like. I was performing in the role of that sniveling coward,
Right.
the worm. I can't even think of something that I have less respect and regard for. And he probably feels the same way about his behavior.
Yeah.
I would
Because I'm
never
sure
behave
he's
that
had
way.
feedback about that behavior.
Right. So
And
we were
it's
both given
something
that
he couldn't
opportunity.
help. Yeah.
Yep, to work on our own shadows and see it, because you can't see it until you behave it.
Right.
And
Until you
thankfully,
experience it. Yes.
it was performed in a way that was low consequences.
Yeah. Because sometimes we were talking about road rage. Sometimes it can, if it's met as well with another warrior, perhaps there is war.
Right. There could
Because
have been a real
two warriors
confrontation.
together can create a battle that does not end well.
Right.
And even with that warrior archetype that was so angry with you, it could have been worse.
Right. Right. It could have
I'm
gotten
glad
worse.
it wasn't, Susanna.
Right. And the future for me, rather than shrinking and becoming smaller and more passive and repressing that dark side of me even further, I began to work with it. And like, where else does the coward show up in my life? When else, you know, what are other experiences that I'm having where this same feeling, maybe on a much reduced scale, but the same feeling is present?
Yeah.
You know, maybe when my husband comes in and he's frustrated with something and I feel myself want to withdraw, like, oh, he's mad. I want to get away from that.
Yeah.
Can I meet that with that inner peace? Can I meet his frustration or maybe his desire for confrontation with dignity that honors his needs as well as who I am?
And my brain is taking me to from the coward, does that, or can it move into a shapeshifter as well? Like, or are they separate, like a
I would say the
shapeshifter?
shapeshifter is a completely different archetype,
Okay.
motivated by completely different things.
Could we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I have the shapeshifter as part of the magician family. And then I also have the chameleon.
So so the chameleon and the shapeshifter you see as separate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I'd like to learn a little more about.
Yeah. So I have the chameleon as part of the trickster family, because the chameleon, it's very superficial. So it's the ability to just move from place to place, environment to environment, situation to situation, and adapt. Why do chameleons change their color? To match their surroundings? For safety.
Stay safe.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
completely
it's
about
all
safety.
about safety.
Yeah.
So if you have this archetype, then that's your safety mechanism. If you don't have that archetype, then you don't have that safety mechanism at your disposal. The safety mechanism for the shapeshifter is for you, the other person, to not know and to never know who I really am. I can change the shape of who I am to the point that I don't know what my original shape is anymore. So I contort and twist myself, not to meet your needs, but to deceive you.
And it's not on purpose, or is it?
It's unconscious, of course, but it's a different kind of protective mechanism. It's also a power play.
Because and it's under the family of magician, which you just said. So power could be in that showing up in a certain way to get what you want.
Right. And to have the advantage or the upper hand in a situation.
Because you know how to, which would be shadow, right? Because if you're aware that you're doing it, it is manipulation on that level.
Right. Right. But what you might be unaware of, and this is the unconscious part, is the deeper motivation. And so becoming aware of what's the deeper motivation for shape-shifting. And let me give you an example of a shapeshifter, perhaps, that's a little bit different than the chameleon, because they can look the same. And I think sometimes people use the term kind of loosely. But a shapeshifter is when you're able to take on a persona and integrate it in a way that you lose yourself to it. You're not you anymore. You're now this other entity, person, identity, and you maintain that over a period of time. That's what I mean by the difference between superficial, the chameleon. It's just put me in, the library and I'm going to behave this way. Put me, at a circus and I'm going to behave that way. And it's very superficial, and there's an ease to moving in and out of these different colors, let's say, thinking of the chameleon there. Donning one jacket and replacing it with another. So it's superficial. It's just a way to cope, and a way to get along, and a way to get your needs met, and a way to get attention, which is mostly what the chameleon is after. The chameleon is after attention and acceptance and approval.
Yeah,
the
that's very
shapeshifter is
different from
about
the shapeshifter.
control,
Yeah,
and power, and deception.
it's a powerful archetype, isn't it?
Yes. And the person that you deceive is yourself. And that's the shadow, is that you begin to adopt the identity of this is who I am. And then you find yourself in another situation, maybe dealing with another group of people. Maybe you move jobs, maybe you move locations, and you have this ability to appear a certain way, to embody this type of being. So let's say you're given a raise at work and you're now a manager. The shapeshifter will take on the identity that they think is going to give them the most power and make them feel have the most control over the situation. So if they want to be someone who everyone in the office loves, then they're going to be the nice manager that gives everybody days off and, whatever.
Yeah.
If they want to be seen as an authority figure that others fear, then they're going to shape themselves into that. The problem is they start to identify with it and think that's me.
And
So
then
the
that's
deception
over
itself.
time would make them start to have emotional issues pretty
Oh
big.
yeah, because
And
you start to
relationship
lose
issues.
who you are. The shadow shapeshifter is the shapeless.
Ooh, that's good, Susanna. It is the shapeless.
So you lose your form, you lose who you are. I mean, not permanently, obviously,
Right.
but you're disconnected and dissociated from it. And so then once you find yourself in that place, you don't know who you are anymore. So you cling to these shapes. Well, this gives me the most approval. This is where I'm the most respected. So I'm going to keep this shape. But meanwhile, you're isolated, you're alone, you're afraid, and you don't know who you are. And you don't want anyone to know that you don't know who you are, especially yourself.
Yeah, because that's a reflection that can be difficult to see.
Right.
And so if someone has the shapeshifter archetype, as I'm listening, I'm identify with the shapeshifter for sure. So if someone has the archetype of the shapeshifter, what or how could what could the integration be between shadow and light of that archetype?
I think, first of all, being able to recognize self-deception,
Mm-hmm.
that you're not really trying to deceive others, although might be successful at that. You're actually trying to deceive yourself. So once you can recognize what you're trying to deceive yourself with and why, you can recover your original shape.
The why is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, why am I trying to be this other person?
And I would say that also comes from past experience of needing to be also a survival mechanism.
Right.
That is unconscious.
Right. And if you have that archetype at your disposal, let's say, you're going to use it. And
Well,
it's
sure. It's
save
part
you.
of the magician as well.
Yeah. Right. So it's going to save you. But if you don't have it, then you're going to have to look at what's available to you in terms of archetypes. And then you'll gravitate toward whatever has the most power to protect you.
Yeah.
So if someone has the shapeshifter, that's a very powerful and very protective archetype, because it has that cloak of deception that can save you from all sorts of situations, but it can leave you completely disconnected from others.
Well,
And
I can see why.
yeah, and
There's
some
a
of the
trust
most,
factor there
mm-hmm,
because you don't
very
want them
much
to
so.
see that part of you, the
Right,
real
you
part.
don't even see the real part of you.
No, it's in shadow.
So how would you feel comfortable letting anyone else see it when you haven't even seen it, and you're possibly terrified to see it yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, because those are parts of us that have been put away.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So recovering your original shape, returning to your original shape, is the challenge of integration.
Yeah.
And once you have that original shape identified, like, oh, this is me, you can usually find it in childhood.
Yes.
Who was I before I needed to change my shape? Who was I before I needed to become a contortionist?
And that is that inner work that every human being, I think, is required to look at, because that's part of our experience, is seeing the parts in us that we judge, that are the shadow, unconscious,
Right.
the unknown, and bringing them into integration and movement in and out of them versus
Right.
having a thick line between us.
And then the shapeshifter can reveal herself. This is what integration looks like with the shapeshifter. Let's say you've taken on the corporate identity. Let's say you're at a big, conference, and you're speaking at that conference, and it's a big business technology, kind of that sort of thing. And you can feel the shapeshifter, like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
You know how to dress.
Yeah.
You know how to do your makeup and hair. You know how to talk. You know how to interact, and you don't know how you know all this. You just know it.
Yes, that's the archetype.
Over you and embodies you, and there you are. And it has served you so well. The challenge then is to reveal that.
And reveal it to other people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. To pull
So
the
how would
curtain.
that look, Susanna?
So let's say you're having an interaction with someone, or maybe you're getting up to speak in front of everyone, and then you acknowledge what I just acknowledged.
Okay, yes. To just admit, this is where I'm at.
Like I came here and I dressed the part, and I made sure that I did my hair in the right way to fit this conference, and so that I could look like I could fit in with all of you, and you would all trust me.
Yeah.
Because I look like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the truth is, I'm just a human being who's trying to figure out life.
Yeah.
Just like you.
I think of that every time I do a video, Susanna.
Right. And so you're just revealing it's not like you have to change your behavior. You don't have to show up as the original you in every situation. You want to play with the shapeshifter.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of power in it. But there's greater power in the revelation that it offers. Because now, in that example that I gave, you have a connection to your audience, a magical connection that you could not have had using every shapeshifter method you've ever imagined.
Yeah. And I, even just hearing you say that, that person would come in so grounded, and people could identify from a heart space versus an intellect space.
Right.
With the
It reminds me
shapeshifter
of the stage magicians that show people how the trick is performed.
after the trick is performed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So they perform the trick and everyone ooh and ah, and then they say, do you want to see how it's done?
Yeah.
That's the revelation part. That's the pulling back the curtain and showing people. And that revelation is where trust is built.
Yeah.
And that's where the audience, if we're using the stage magician example, that's where the audience sees the real person, your original shape.
And then there's not,
Yeah.
I still think it leaves a little bit of mystery. I think of the different shows that I used to watch, like Chris, he was a magician,
Chris Angel.
Yeah. I love watching his shows. And I really, and as I'm hearing you, what I'm thinking about is the reason I love him is because he's so human, and he would show us what he was doing behind it, and his heart was in it, which you could also feel, and he expressed that. So even though it's TV, the back and forth of, oh, I love that mystery still.
Right.
And I love the magic in it and understanding it.
Well, it purifies the mystery.
It completely does.
Because it takes the illusion and the deception out of it and leaves you with something pure and real.
And so people aren't questioning whether you have integrity or not.
Right. Because it isn't about you presenting yourself in a certain way. It's about you exposing the mystery of life.
Yeah. Which is what Chris Angel did with his gift.
Right. And that's why if you got up at that conference and talked about how you had shaped yourself to fit and how you knew that you could come and pull all of this off effectively, and you're sharing that with your whole audience, you're showing them the magic trick, how it was performed, and then you're revealing who you really are. So well, even I'm going to meet you there.
Yeah. And I think that is such an invitation for people to come in and feel safe in your presence, that there isn't any smoke and mirrors around it.
And yet you can still play with the smoke.
Absolutely. And that's the beautiful, that's that dancing back and forth with the light and shadow that always exists in us. And why can't we do both?
Right. We can and should.
Yeah, I so agree. Well, this has been so fascinating. I hope to have another conversation soon. So thank you, Susanna. That was so fantastic.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.